Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be back. Last week was such a fun moment for me. If you weren't here last week, my son preached last week, and I got to be in the front row, and now we dropped him back off at school. So that was a really, really cool moment for us. This morning, we're going to be in Exodus chapter 16. So if you have your Bibles, you're going to want to turn there. In a moment, I'm going to have you stand up, and we're going to read through verses 1 through 12. So let me just kind of be transparent with you with what we're doing and where we are in our series on the book of Exodus. We're going through the entire book of Exodus this year. We will finish it by, Thanksgiving weekend? Just before Thanksgiving weekend. And if you have looked at the book of Exodus, you're going, how are we going to finish it by Thanksgiving? Because here's the deal. There are 40 chapters in the book of Exodus. Where are we? Where are we today? 16, okay? So that means from January through the middle of August, we have covered 15 chapters. And we've got 40 total. But here's the thing, and this is what I want you to notice. I've broken it down, just kind of shown you how Exodus is really broken down into 4 parts. In the first part, which is the part that we've covered up to this point, today we begin section 2. So we're making progress, okay? Caden put an end to section 1 last week. But the first section is really the most foundational section. Sections 2, 3, and 4 all feed off of the foundation that is laid in the first section. So we had to spend a lot of time on that first section. The first section goes from chapter 1 all the way through the halfway point of chapter 15. And this is where we're looking at Israel's captivity in Egypt and ultimately their release. So this is where God raises up Moses. We see Moses raised in Pharaoh's household. He kills an Egyptian. He's sent to the wilderness. He's doubting who he is. He's timid. He's shy. He's all of these different things. Then God ultimately leads him before Pharaoh. Let my people go. We've got 10 plagues. We've got the parting of the Red Sea. And then finally it ends with this triumphant song that we talked about last week. I know Caden gave me a hard time. It's like, what good stuff did you leave for me? But I left music to him. I mean, I don't know what he's complaining about. That's a very good topic. So he got to talk to us about what Israel did. And I want you to remember this. After God has split the Red Sea, saved them from Pharaoh, brought them through the Red Sea, and then drowned Pharaoh and his army. So that captor will never be an issue ever again. He's done, right? The army's gone. They're wiped out. So God has done this miraculous thing in their life. And on the other side of it, they sing this song that we see, the Song of Moses, at the end of Exodus chapter 15. It's got some great lyrics. It's like taunting lyrics. Horse and rider, God is thrown into the sea. If you grew up in the 80s, and Caden was reading that last week, if you grew up in the 80s, there's songs that are, into the sea, this. Anybody raised with me? Anybody else with me? Just these choruses from the 80s came from this. I don't know how you turn this into a worship song. It's like, you drowned the enemy. You killed Pharaoh. They're dead, right? Praise Jesus. And so that's what's going on in this first section of captivity and the exodus out of Egypt. Now, today what we're going to do is we're going to start a new section. We're calling this section, or calling this sermon series, Tantrums Grace, by which a lot of us who are parents, or remember when we were children through tantrums, I might have your attention, and we will talk about that in a minute. We're going to talk about tantrums and grace for the next 5 chapters, from Exodus 15 all the way through Exodus 20. What we find in Exodus 15, 16, 17 is Israel now coming out of the Red Sea. They've sung the song, but they're going to run into some speed bumps. Some things are going to happen, and how are they going to respond? And then how does God respond to their response? And the answer is God always responds with grace. And the coolest part in chapters 15 through 20, the coolest act of grace, which is something I would have never guessed going into this series, is he gives the Israelite children the law. He's like, let me demonstrate to you how much I love you, how much grace and mercy I have on you. And he gives them a list of 613 rules. And I don't know how that screams love, but we're going to find out. Actually, I do know. You might not know, but in a couple of weeks, we will unpack that, what the law looks like. So that's the second section. After that, we're going to go from chapters 21 through 31, and we're going to look at God's presence, which is the story of the tabernacle, the instructions on how to build the tabernacle, why the tabernacle, where God's presence was in the Old Testament, what that means for us today under the new covenant. And then finally, we end in chapters 32 through 40, which is all about God's glory, where all of this at the end of the day points to his glory. So that's how we're going to finish. And that very last one will end the week before Thanksgiving. Then we'll go into Advent and we'll celebrate Christmas and all of that fun stuff. And then we've got some exciting things planned for the beginning of the year. But today we're starting a short series called Tantrums Grace. And again, what we're doing is we're on that other side of the Red Sea. They've sung the Song of Moses. They celebrated what God has done. Now what? And here's what I want to warn you. This story, and really everything from chapter 15 through 17, is probably the most applicable text in the entirety of the book of Exodus. This is the stuff we can relate with the most. God does something phenomenal, and soon after we run into a roadblock. Something happens, and all of a sudden it's like we forgot what God has done. And we have a choice to make. How are we going to respond to God when things don't go our way? Now, here's the pattern of Israel. Here's what they did. I'm not saying this is what we do. I'm saying this is what Israel did. 4 different times, from 15 through 17, 4 different times. Remember, they've just come through the greatest miracle this world had ever seen. The splitting of the Red Sea, God defeats this mighty army. They're rejoicing, they're singing these incredible songs to God in worship. And 4 times immediately after that, they run into these stumbling blocks. They run into a problem. Something happens. And all 4 times when that problem happens, how do they respond? Anybody know? They grumble, they complain, they murmur. They're like, Moses, Aaron, this stinks. Why didn't we just stay in Egypt? We had it so much better. And every time they grumble and complain, God responds. Anybody know how he responds? All 4 times with grace. So they run into a stumbling block, they complain, God responds with grace. And it's 4 different occasions, and they're just mirrors of one another. Now, what I've chosen to do, instead of spending a week on each of the 4 incidences or each of the 4 stumbling blocks, we're just going to look at number 2, okay? We're just going to look at Exodus 16, and we're going to see what happens in number 2. But in order to do that, I want to set the stage for you so you see what's happening here. Remember, there's 4 speed bumps or 4 problems that they run into. The first one is just kind of funny. This is like, how could they forget so quickly what God has done? Here's what happens. End of chapter 15. They're singing the song. Everything we talked about last week. They're singing this song, high praise. They're just worshiping God, good mood. Vibes are high, right? Vibes are high. You ever been there with God? Like, it's like, Lord, I will never doubt you again. I promise. My faith is like, this is consistency. We're going to stay right here for the rest of our lives. And then 3 verses later, anybody know, without looking at it, anybody know how many days later this was after they get done singing their song? 3 days, 3 verses later, and all of a sudden they're complaining. 3 days, y'all, from the freaking Red Sea party. Am I allowed to say that? It's Sunday, we're good. Okay, so 3 days later, 3 verses later, God has just split the sea wide open, and all of a sudden a problem ensues. And now here's what happens. This is crazy to me what happens. 3 days later, they're now walking towards the promised land, towards Canaan, and they're walking in the wilderness. They're not wandering in the wilderness. They're intentionally going somewhere at this point. 3 days in, and they have no water. No water. They're thirsty. Now, let's just put it out there. This is a legitimate problem. Let's not make light of this and be like, oh, those wimps, they haven't had water in 3 days. Poor people. No, that's a big deal. You need water in 3 days. So we don't want to kind of nullify the pain here or the suffering. The suffering is real. The problem is, and this is what all 4 of these incidences are going to point out, is that the Israelites don't know where their faith is actually placed. It's placed in themselves. They're like, hey, God, we worship you. God, we worship you. As soon as something comes across that's troubling, they're like, who's God? And so they're complaining. They go to Moses, they go to Aaron, and they're complaining that they don't have any water. It's just ridiculous to me as you read it. There's humor in this. It's like, have you not forgotten what God just did? Like the miracles he did with the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea. I mean, it's like, the last miracle God did, what was the substance of that miracle? It was water. Okay, did Caden just wear you guys out? Help me. Come back with me, okay? So it was water. It's like H2O. He just did this miracle with water, and now they're like, he can't do anything with. He can't provide water. Where's the water? It's better that we go back to Egypt and die there. So they run across, 3 days later, they finally run across a spring. They're like, oh, thank God, we found water. We can drink water. They go to drink the water. It's the water of the spring of Mara. So it's the spring named Mara, which means bitter. Why? Because the water in the spring is bitter. So they get there, they're like, we finally found water. They drink it, and they're like, it's undrinkable. No! More complaining, more murmuring. But then they notice, hey, God told Moses to throw a stick in the water. Moses throws a stick in the water becomes drinkable and sweet. Yay, we're happy. That's the end of the first story. So they run into this problem, no water. They complain, they murmur, they grumble. And God, by his grace, says, hey, Moses, throw a stick in the water. The water becomes sweet. They drink the water, and now they're happy. Set up for the second problem. If you would, stand with me. Exodus chapter 16. This story is insane. Everything in me wants to punch these guys because they're so stupid. But then I'm like, but this is my life story too. So if I punch them, I have to punch me. And that's really awkward. So check this out. Exodus chapter 16, starting with verse 1. The Israelites, they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. on the 15th day of the second month, after they had departed from the land of Egypt, and the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. Notice it doesn't say they grumbled against God. Cowards, right? How passive aggressive is this? They know God. They know what God can do. And they're like, we got some complaining to do, but we're not going to take it up with him. We're going to go to Moses and Aaron. So they complain, grumble against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Do you hear it? You feel this? This is ridiculous. This is like 2 weeks ago when we talked about the parting of the Red Sea. When they got to the Red Sea, they're like, it would have been better for us to stay in Egypt and die there. At least we had food there. And they forget, why was Pharaoh feeding them? So they would be strong enough to be slaves. They're like, oh yeah, there's that part of the equation as well. So they're already misremembering or forgetting everything. Verse 4, the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain. And I'm like, rain thunder? Rain justice, judgment, wrath. What are you about to rain on these complainers and whiners? I'm about to rain bread from heaven for you. And the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it'll be twice as much as they gather daily. So Moses and Aaron said to all the people of Israel, at evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. How do they not know that already? Like, what's wrong with these people? How do they need to be reminded that it was the Lord that brought them out of Egypt? And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against the Lord. God has heard them. For what are we, Moses and Aaron, that you grumble against us? And Moses said, when the Lord gives you in the evening meat to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, because the Lord has heard your grumbling, that you grumble against him, what are we? Your grumbling is not against us, but against the Lord. It's like Moses goes off on a little rant here. He's like, I want to remind you, I'm just Mo. Like, leave me alone. Me and Aaron, we're just doing what we're supposed to do. You're grumbling, your fight. It's not with me. Take it up with him, okay? I'm just reminding you, I'm just the guy that's representing him. Verse 9, Moses said to Aaron, say to the whole congregation of the people, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. Right? That's like he's calling the bluff moment. I have heard you grumble. As soon as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the people of Israel. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God. This is the word of the Lord. You can go ahead and be seated. There's so much in this that we could just dissect for so long, this idea of once this happens, once I feed you, once I give you water, all of this stuff, then they're going to know that I am the Lord your God who sent you out of Egypt. I'm like, how in the world do they not know this, right? How have they not locked in on this? So we'll get there. Let's start with this. This series called Tantrums Grace. So parents, show of hands. Collectively, be proud of this. Embarrass your children right now on the spot. How many of you guys have had a public moment where your kid has had a temper tantrum and it's just one of the most horrible things you've ever experienced in your life, okay? Your kids have thrown temper tantrums, okay? Everybody else, how many of you guys can remember, or all of us, how many of you guys can remember throwing a temper tantrum or two in your day, right? Back in the day? How many of you guys have stood in an awkward moment where you've seen a parent watching their child have a total meltdown in public and you've been so uncomfortable and enjoyed it all at the same time? Yeah? There we are, okay? So let's think about this. Let's think about this for a moment, because every parent has experienced this from the age of 1.5 years old all the way to 5. It's like a walking time bomb when you go anywhere in public. It may or may not happen. You have no idea. And you always have that one kid who the odds are higher with this one than the other one. It may or may not. All the parents are looking at each other right now. They're like, yeah, we know who it is. It's child number 2, right? So this is going to happen. So they go out. If you've ever seen this is what takes place. They go out to a restaurant, go out to a store, Walmart, Publix, whatever restaurant, and all of a sudden you see little Timmy on the floor. We picked on Timmy a couple weeks ago, so let's go with Timmy again. Sorry, Timmy. And so Timmy's on the floor. He's having an absolute meltdown. It's obvious what mom must have just said to him. Must have said, hey, son, Timmy, you're worthless. You're ugly, right? You smell like the urinal at a 7-Eleven. You're a terrible kid. I hate you, kid. It's apparently what she said, because he's acting as though this is the end of his life. right? Everything that could be wrong is going wrong, and he is having this absolute meltdown in the middle of this store, and it's not good. So this has to be what's going on with this kid, but we all know the truth, don't we? We all know the truth. Little Timmy, he's this brat in this moment, just in this moment, he's having a bratty moment. He headbutts mom. He lifts up with his big old cranium, headbutts mom in the shin. Mom's like, I'm not sure I even like you anymore. I don't know what's going on in this. And all of this stuff is taking place. Mom never said you're ugly. Mom never said you're worthless. As a matter of fact, mom's probably clothed him since day one, fed him, told him how much she loves him. But in that moment, Timmy was told no. And so he has an absolute meltdown and wants to make sure everybody sees it. Now, in that meltdown moment, two things are simultaneously happening. Number one, the meltdown itself. Okay, so this kid is just losing it. And mom or dad is sitting there looking, going, how can I stop this? How can I make this stop? Like, there's no doubt when we get home, we're going to take care of this, right? For me and growing up in my family, my mom's thing was, wait till you get home, your father. That's all she needed to say, your father. I'm like, oh, man. Like, we weren't scared of mom. We were scared of dad, right? We should have been scared of mom. And so this whole thing, the meltdown is happening. It's taking place. How do I get it to stop? What do I need to do to get this kid off the floor? He's limp. He's got dead weight. We're in Walmart. The floor is disgusting. He's licking the floor. He's soaking up the floor. All of this stuff is here. And mom is thinking, dad is thinking, if the meltdown's in front of dad, we're thinking, is it all right if I just leave him here? Like, come back. Nobody's going to take him. Nobody wants him in this state, right? Or maybe you're at the mall and you're like, is there a store? Is there a department where I can trade him in, exchange him for a different model, kind of get an upgrade from what's going on? Like, your mind is thinking all these thoughts. It's like, do I really love this kid? And of course you do, but this is a horrible moment for the life of the parent. The second thing that is also simultaneously happening, not only is the meltdown occurring, but you as a parent know this is happening. The judgmental stares of everybody else in this place are all locked in on you. Nobody's looking at Timmy anymore. They're now looking at mom or dad going, how are you going to handle this, right? And that's where our self-righteousness peaks up. It was like, if that's me, I'm whooping the snot out of that child, right? Publicly, I'm going to make sure everybody sees it. But when it's your turn, you're like, I don't want anybody to call the cops. This is bad. How I feel about this kid right now, I can't respond this way. So what's going on? You're wondering, is this kid's last final breath, like, because mom's going to take his life, or is this a modern mom who's going to affirm little Timmy? Oh, you let it out. That's a good cry, Timmy. Just let it out. You need to just get it all out. Like, what's going on here? So these things are happening all at the same time, the meltdown and the stares of judgment. Ladies and gentlemen, as we walk through Exodus 15 through 17, grab your popcorn. Like, grab your popcorn, pull up a chair, because we get to watch what God is going to do with Israel when they do this. They're having an absolute meltdown. God has brought them out of the Red Sea, delivered them with plagues, all this incredible, beautiful stuff. They've sung songs, ladies and gentlemen. Our God is an awesome God. Help me. He reigns from heaven above. And then next chapter, they're like, no, he hates me. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. That God's not so awesome. Okay? This is what's going on. This is insanity, what is taking place with these Israelite children. Same thing that happened with your kids, right? You provide for them. You take care of them. You wouldn't let them have the truck, and they lose their mind. And they're like, I don't even like you anymore. And in your head, you're like, feelings mutual, bro. Okay, so it's like this is all going on. What is God going to do? His children, his people that he has called to himself and brought through with these plagues and through the Red Sea, and they've sung songs to him and said how much they worship him and love him. And now all of a sudden they're having this tantrum. What in the world is God going to do? And we see what God does. 4 different times, all 4 different times. God is patient and he's merciful with his children, and he gives them grace. And we see in this whole thing, even this illustration with Timmy, that for Timmy, the issue was never about the truck. It wasn't just that mom said no to the truck. The truck's just a byproduct of it all. At the end of the day, what Timmy wanted was he wanted to be in control. Timmy wanted to be the one calling the shots. I wanted you, mom, to do what I tell you to do. And when you said no, you're putting your foot down saying that you are in control, and I'm not cool with that. And that's exactly what's going on here in Exodus chapter 15 through 17, is that we have control issues. One of the things that we've seen as we've walked through the entirety of the book of Exodus, this goes all the way back to chapter 2 and 3, is that there's this idea that God knows more than we know. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. If you remember, all the way back at the beginning of this, we talked about how Moses was brought into Pharaoh's house. And we're like, why would God do that? And there must have been times where Moses is like, why'd you take me from my people? Why am I being raised in this house? And we unpacked that because in Pharaoh's house, Moses was getting an education that he couldn't get anywhere else. He was learning to be a military leader and strategist. He was getting all these things that he couldn't get, but only God knew this. Moses didn't know that he was being prepared for something greater and grander near the end of his life, and it was all in this season where it seemed like God had gone dark. So we looked at this where this idea, this understanding throughout Exodus is God knows more than we do. He's got a bigger picture. He's more holy. He's been there from the beginning. This is why Isaiah says it like this in chapter 55. He says, my thoughts, and he's speaking on behalf of God, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And that's lovely. That's beautiful. Like we can sing songs about that. We can recite that all day. And we're like, God, we know your thoughts are higher than ours, that your ways are higher than ours. We get that. We really believe that. You're holy. You're perfect. You've been around forever. Like you wrote this story. We understand that you've got a perspective that we can never see. So in theory, we get that. But in practice, we want control. We're like, I know you know everything, but do you really know this part of my life? Do you really understand this intricate detail, this speed bump in my life? Do you really understand what's going on here? So what we're seeing in all four of these bumps in the road is that God's people are, how they respond when they're confronted with the reality that God's ways are different than theirs, that God thinks differently than we do, that his ways are different than ours. So when life hits, and they have a proposed method that they think God should run with. Like, hey, God, this is what I think you should do. Like, I'm going through that in my life right now, aren't you? How many areas of your life are you like, God, you should do it this way, right? We've got Caden that's suffering he didn't mention anything about it. He's got this alpha-gal syndrome where he bit by a tick 4 years ago. Now he's deathly allergic to beef and pork and fried chicken. And so we're slowly integrating these things back in because he's got a treatment for it with an acupuncturist. And it's working, but it's slower than we would like. And so last week we introduced him to beef again. So on Wednesday, he had a hamburger from McDonald's, which may speak to the fact that maybe there's not beef in the burger. He did great. Like no response to the burger whatsoever. Imagine after he's like, man, imagine not having, if you're a beef eater and all of a sudden beef was taken from you. He's like, that was delicious. And McDonald's is delicious whether or not it's beef. And so he has it, no reaction. Friday night, we're like, okay, time to step it up. So we gave him a piece of steak. We went out to a restaurant, gave him a piece of steak. I mean, it was half of an ounce of steak. But we forgot we weren't supposed to give him bloody steak. We were supposed to give him well-done steak. I gave him medium rare steak, and he had an incredibly violent reaction. Friday night was horrible for us. We watched our kid as he's struggling. His lips are flaring up. He's vomiting, all of this stuff. I'm sitting there about to preach this, and I'm telling God, why are you doing this? What in the world? I mean, if I were you, just heal him. He wants to preach your word. You saw what he did Sunday. What in the world? I mean, I'm about to preach this, and I'm thinking that. So I really, really get what's going on here. So think about what the Israelites are going through. They're thinking, they're on the other side of the Red Sea. They're singing the song. They run into a bump of the road, and immediately, their first thought, what kind of God would lead us out here only to kill us? And then the drama kicks in. We're parched. We're so thirsty. We can't drink. Oh, wait. Moses, you're throwing a stick in the water, and we can drink it now. Cool. Awesome. Well, we can drink. Yay, God, we can drink. You answered our prayer. We can drink. But wait, we're hungry. That's the next section. We need food. We need food. Oh, wait, God's going to what? He's going to provide food for us by providing exactly the amount of food we need every single day. Not much, not more, not less, exactly how much we need in the form of bread being rained down from heaven, as though that's normal. Right? Every single morning, we're going to wake up and bread is going to be rained down from heaven. Cool. Thank you, God. We worship you. But God, one more thing. Yeah, we were hungry. Now we're not hungry. But, the bread's getting old. We would like some protein. I mean, these guys are just greedy. They're like, give us some protein. Do you remember when we were in Egypt and we built these muscles carrying all these bricks? We were ripped. We were shredded. We were yoked. We were all these. We were built. And without my protein shake in the morning, I'm suffering. So God's like, okay, cool. At night, I'm going to give you all the quail you can eat. Right? I'm going to give you the protein. And what do they do on the other side of the quail? They then respond with, oh yeah, but we're thirsty again. This is the pattern. They're thirsty, they're hungry for protein, and then they're thirsty again. All 4 times they grumble and complain against God. And what we're seeing here is how God's people typically respond when they're confronted with the reality that God's ways are not the same as their ways, that they're not in control. When we realize, don't you think, when we realize that we're not in control, that God is actually in control, isn't that good news? Do you really want control of your life? When you're not omniscient, you don't know everything. You're not all powerful, but he is. Wouldn't you like to submit to a God like that? So when we want control, there's no gratitude, there's no joy, there's fear, there's anxiety, and there's complaining. And that's exactly what's happening. And then in chapter 16, verse 4, there's a verse that unlocks everything. Here we're told why God is doing this. Because when they walked out, I would imagine, when they walked out of the Red Sea, and then they saw God drown their enemy, I would imagine, like I said, the vibes were high, and I would imagine they're thinking, man, it's about to get good. Like the rest of our life is going to be a piece of cake. We're going to walk into the promised land, this land flowing with milk and honey. We're going to have all of this stuff. We're going to be the nation. We're God's people. It's going to be easy. We've got it made in the shade. So they're thinking this, but that's not what happens. And God reveals why I'm allowing suffering in your life. Verse 4, the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather that day's portion every single day, that, and here's the demonstrative pronoun, in order that, so that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. Ladies and gentlemen, every single bump in the road that they came through in 40 years in the wilderness was nothing more than God testing them. Apparently, they failed a lot because they needed to be there 40 years. What we find right here is day 3. They're 3 days into this 40-year journey, and they are failing the test already. So here in chapter 16, God is revealing his motive. He's not trying to hide anything from them. He's not being secretive. He's unveiling to them, listen, the reason I provided or didn't provide water right away, the reason you're hungry, the reason you want protein, the reason you're still thirsty, is because I'm testing you. Where is your faith, or where is your lack of faith? And the truth is, think about this in your own life. Every time we talk about suffering, you know this is true. It's important for God's people to learn faith amidst struggle. Our biggest growth spiritually is always in our struggle, always in our suffering. So these guys are suffering. They can't understand why. It doesn't make sense in light of what they've just come from because they thought everything was going to be good. But then they need to understand this is what God is trying to teach them. They're trying to teach them that his plan is different from anything that they've ever had planned, and his way is always, always better. And it's a question that we're still asking today. If we're God's people, why in the world are we suffering? And in this room, man, I know the stories in this room. Right now, there's some of you guys that are going through absolute hell. Some of you guys have lost fathers. Some of you have fathers who are dying of cancer, right? Some of you guys have wayward children. Some of you have relationship issues. Marriage is falling apart. We've got all of this, and we're going, hey, if I follow Jesus, why? Why is this happening? And that's what this is addressing. Dorothy Sayers, a British writer, you may have heard of her. She said this about the Christian faith. She said, it is quite disastrous that people think Christianity is an unreal, otherworldly religion, kind of this distant, euphoric religion. On the contrary, it is fiercely and even harshly realistic. And she's right. She's right. Christianity is the only worldview that takes suffering seriously. It doesn't run from it. It doesn't hide from suffering. It tackles it head on. It doesn't deny it, and it never gives cheap answers. Every man-made religion outside of Christianity tries to explain away suffering, but Christianity faces it head on. Think about this. Eastern religions, like Buddhism, okay? Just for an example, just a quick example. They're going to tell you what to do with suffering. They're going to say suffering is just an illusion. Okay? It's because you've become too independent. You need to become more part of the whole. So meditate, forget all your thoughts, become part of the whole, and this illusion of suffering will disappear. So that's Eastern religions. Western religions is very moralistic. If you're a good person, then good things will happen to you. If you're a bad person, bad things are going to happen to you. This is what Job's friends were like. Like, hey, Job, what did you do wrong that you've got all this suffering in your life? And here's the thing. This isn't really facing suffering at all. It's making excuses for suffering. It's kind of justifying what God is supposed to be. So in all of this, and we need to think about this, especially in the Western perspective, or the Western religions, where they're saying if you're a good person, everything's going to go right. If you're a bad person, things are going to go wrong. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Our Bible says that the rain shines on the just and unjust, or the rain falls on the just and the unjust. It happens to everybody. Good people suffer. Righteous people get cancer. Faithful people have things break, right? So all of this stuff happens. Christianity, though, is different from any other religion. It not only allows for undeserved suffering, but ladies and gentlemen, dare I say that it actually centers on it? At the heart of everything we stand for, the heart of everything we believe in our faith, is that once upon a time, there's this one truly good person in the person of Jesus, the only one who is good, who has ever lived. And he suffered unjustly. He wasn't spared, he was crucified, and it was through his suffering that God accomplished our redemption and his purposes. So that's why suffering doesn't mean God has abandoned you. Think about this. In your life, if you're going through suffering, it may mean that God is trying to work his redemptive purposes through you. So we face suffering a little bit different. Here's the thing. Suffering always does something in us, no matter what, no matter which way we choose. If we're going to choose to have faith or a lack of faith, it always does something in us. We are never left the same on the other side of our suffering. One of two things is going to happen. Our hearts are either going to be softened or our hearts are going to be hardened. We're going to be more tender, more compassionate, more empathetic, or the opposite is going to take place. We're going to become more bitter, we're going to be angrier, we're going to be prouder. We're either going to make God big in our own eyes and say, listen, I'm dependent upon you. I'm desperate for you in every area of my life. I need you because your ways are higher than my ways. Your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Or we're going to make ourselves bigger in our own eyes and say, God, how dare you do this to me? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I have done? So suffering either humbles you or it inflates you. And it's just like the heat of the sun. The heat of the sun can either melt wax or it can harden clay. The same experience will do very different things depending on the condition of your hearts. That's what's going on here in Exodus 15 through 17. They were thirsty, they were hungry, and instead of trusting God, who just split the Red Sea open for them, they demanded answers. Why aren't you doing it the way we think you should, God? Why aren't you just casually bringing us into the promised land where everything is easy? God, I should be in control and not you. So how we respond, listen, how we respond in these moments of suffering, in these wilderness moments, really reveals what's going on in your heart. So Friday night, we're literally in the parking lot of our favorite ice cream place in Hutchinson Island, and Caden is losing everything. And it's violent, and we're hoping he can still breathe. And I'm sitting here going, God, do I trust that you're in control of this? Because this doesn't make sense. And it's revealing areas of my heart where I'm like, I mean, you're preaching on this. Do you trust what you are about to say in all of this? And I don't know about you, but for me, that's a big deal. How do you respond in the wilderness and the seasons of suffering? What's in your heart? Will you trust the God who's already proven himself faithful? Or will you act like he owes you more proof? So suffering is a crossroads. It's a test. Now, in our text, it says that they were hungry, and they're complaining, and God responds with manna from heaven. It was just a side note that's really interesting. The word manna comes from the Hebrew word manhu, or manhu. You got to kind of spit in the back of your throat to pronounce it. Did you know that the word manna doesn't even mean bread? In verse 15, they use the word manhu, and they use it as a question. The word manhu, or the word manna, means, what is it? What is it? So they see, what is it falling from heaven? They have no idea what it is, and because they didn't know what to call it, they're just like, let's just call it, what is it? So bread from this moment forward, this manna word transformed and transitioned into this word, what is it? And after that question being asked, God is asking, will you follow me? Because my ways are different from yours. So let's look real quickly, and then I'm done, at two ways God uses manna here in the wilderness. First of all, he shows us that manna is satisfying, or manna as satisfying. God gives the instructions for the manna. He told his people, this is just fascinating. I've read this story since I was a little kid. He says this, he says, here's what I want you to do. Every single morning, I want you to go out, and I want you to get 1 omer, okay? I don't even know what an omer is, but it's a daily supply of bread. Go outside, pick up enough bread for you. Okay, so go out and get enough bread for you. Don't get any more than you need, because if you do, at the end of the day, anything that you have left, anything that's left over is going to spoil. It's going to rot. You're going to have maggots. You're going to have all this gross stuff that you don't want in your house. Don't do it. Just get what you need. Just get what you need. And think about this. For that culture, think about how difficult that had to be, because this is a culture that would store things. They would have a harvest, and then they would store, and that provision would come from all that savings over the months ahead. Okay, so they're used to storing things. But God's like, not now. Not as I'm guiding you through this wilderness and ultimately to the promised land. I'm going to teach you to trust me every single day for provision in your life. You're going to go to bed, and anything extra that you have in your room is going to spoil. You can't eat it the next day, so you're going to wake up, and every single morning, you're going to have to pray and hope that my mercy is still there. And every single day, I am going to provide this for you. And what does he do, ladies and gentlemen? For 40 years. For 40 years, they wake up and find that his mercies are new. Every single morning that he can be trusted, every single morning. Charles Spurgeon said it like this. He said, when you can't see God's hand, trust his heart. Not your heart. The world's response is, when you can't see God, trust your heart. God's saying, when you can't see my hand, trust my heart. Know that I love you. Know that I am good. And that's what God is inviting these Israelite children to trust his heart. Trust in his goodness. If anybody in the world knows how good he is, it's them. They've just seen it. Trust in his daily, unwavering faithfulness. And for the next 40 years in the wilderness, he never missed a day. 4 decades, every single morning, manna was there. Because he didn't give them the manna so that they could have victory over the desert. He gave them manna so they could know him, so they could taste and see that the Lord is good. And they would learn day by day that his provision satisfies in a way that nothing else can. And that's our God. Every single day, he's going to give you what you need. And you're like, hey, I want you to give me what I want. Because I call the shots. I know what I need. And God's like, I will always give you what you need. So first of all, manna is satisfying. The second thing, manna is sanctifying. Let's shift to this. When we're walking through this all the way through Thanksgiving, if you can, I would encourage you to go ahead and read the book of Deuteronomy. It's the 5th book of the Pentateuch. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. All 5 of them, we believe, were written by Moses, okay? So each one of these books of the Bible has a different flair to it, or a different way of telling the story. Genesis and Exodus are very much a narrative account. We're looking at a story. What happens in Deuteronomy is Moses looks back over his life. He's at the end of his life, and he's now looking back, and he's explaining this is why God did things. An old man has wisdom. I can see what happened. Think about this in the New Testament. We've got the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and even the book of Acts, where these are the stories of Jesus and everything that he did, his life, death, and resurrection, birth, life, death, and resurrection, and even the establishment of his church. And then after those gospel accounts, what do we get? We get the letters. We get the epistles of Paul, which do what? They explain for us what happened in the gospel. And so Deuteronomy is kind of Paul's epistles for the Pentateuch. Deuteronomy explains what was going on in these books. Listen to what Moses says in Deuteronomy chapter 8, referring to this point in the wilderness experience. It says this to his people, you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness. So this is the end of 40 years. We've been looking at day 3. Fast forward 40 years. We have seen, you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you. He tested you so that he might humble you, testing you to know what is in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. And he humbled you, and he let you hunger, and he fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know. How come they didn't know it? Because his thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. That he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. So do you see it? This was never about food. This was never about water or manna or protein. It was about spiritual formation. God was shaping his people. He'd already called them. He'd already consecrated them. He's already called them his own, but now it's time to form them. God was humbling his people, not to hurt them or embarrass them, but to help them. He was drawing their hearts towards himself, knowing that he alone could provide what they need. He was saying, I'll feed you, I'll take care of you, I'll satisfy your hunger, but I will also use your hunger, that hunger, to sanctify you. I'll use it to shape your heart. I want to read one more quote by Spurgeon and then wrap this up. This quote is insane, so stick with it. This is beautiful. Charles Spurgeon wrote this. He said, God desired then to teach them, the Israelites here, to teach them himself by the gift of the manna. And he taught them first his care over them, that he was their God and that they were his people. So before anything, they needed to know that he was their God. I have called you, I have chosen you, I have sanctified you, I have consecrated you. And that he would lay himself out to provide for them. Now, think of the care that God had over them, over each one of them. For each man had his own omer of manna, his own portion. No woman, no child was forgotten. Every morning, there was a sufficient quantity for every man, according to his eating for that day. There was no more, and there was never any less. So carefully did God watch over each individual. The individuality of the divine love is a great part of its sweetness. God thinks of every separate child of his as much as if he had only had the one. The multiplicity of his elect does not divide the loaf of his affection. He has an infinite affection for each one, and he will take care of the details of each chosen life. He will see your omer just filled precisely to an ounce. He will give you all you can possibly require, but he will give you nothing that you can lay up to minister to your pride. So what he's saying here is God doesn't do generic provision. He doesn't just throw out a whole bunch of bread and say, just figure it out. He's giving specifically the need of each person. It's precise provision. He knows your needs. He knows your weaknesses. He knows your fears to the ounce. And yes, he will give you everything that you need, but he will not give you what feeds your pride. Now remember this, the manna was never earned. Israel did nothing but grumble and complain. They did not earn this provision. They didn't plant it, they didn't farm it, they didn't harvest it, they didn't grow it, they didn't manufacture it. 1,000% this manna was an act of grace. It was all God. It was grace from heaven. They couldn't earn it, they could only receive it. They throw a tantrum, and God gives them grace, which, as we've said from day one of this series, everything in Exodus points us to the gospel and the new. In John chapter 6, Jesus says these words, "Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger. Whoever believes in me shall never thirst." Jesus is saying that manna, the Old Testament manna, where you ask the question, what is it? What is it? What is it? Nothing but a shadow. It pointed forward to the real thing, to Jesus himself, the one, the bread of life that satisfies and sanctifies. Then we get to the powerful scene in the next chapter, Exodus 17. They're no longer hungry, right? They've been fed with bread and quail. Exodus 17, they're thirsty again. They're like, man, we need water. And they grumble, they accuse, they demand. Once again, God responds not with wrath, but with mercy. This time he tells Moses, take your staff, this staff that you just keep seeing miracle after miracle. Strike the rock, hit the rock. Moses obeys, water pours out, life-giving water from a rock. Why? Because God chose to strike the rock instead of his people. That was mercy. I could strike you, but Moses, strike the rock, water will come. Strike the rock that doesn't deserve it and provide for them what they need. Paul labels this for us or clears this up for us in 1 Corinthians 10. "For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food." Verse 4. "And all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." The one who was struck when the people should have been struck. And when he was struck, the blood was poured out that provided everything we needed for our sin. What does this mean? What is all of this weird story? What does this mean for me? In the middle of my own suffering, in the middle of my own wilderness, what does this mean? Well, first of all, God didn't just buy your freedom and set you free through the person and work of Jesus, just so you could run wild. He bought your freedom to draw you close to himself, to teach you dependence, to humble you, to teach you to trust him in every single aspect of your life, even when it's really dark. But the tension we feel is this. We want Jesus, we've talked about this endlessly, we want Jesus to save us, but we don't always want to follow him because that's hard. But Jesus is saying, I want to be your Savior and your Lord, not just one or the other. And I want to say this as gently but as strongly as I can and as clearly as I can. Maybe the reason you're frustrated or discouraged because you're spiritually dry right now is because you've been more about God's gifts and what he can give you than about his glory and following him as Lord. Jesus said, if anybody wants to follow me, let him. I demand of him that he deny himself, pick up his cross, and then come follow me. This is not the language of comfort. This is the language of surrender. And yet on the road of surrender, you will find that life finally satisfies. Jesus never promised you that it was going to be easy. He just didn't. The prosperity gospel promises you that. And that's just hogwash from hell. Jesus never promised you that it was going to be easy. He promised that he was always going to be enough. Enough grace for today, enough grace for tomorrow, enough grace for the day after that, enough mercy in the morning, enough provision to flourish even in your wilderness. So whatever you're walking through this morning, let this be a reminder. His manna still flows. What is it? Well, it's Jesus. And he's more than enough for you. His mercy is still new every morning. His grace still satisfies, and his presence still sanctifies. After all, he's the bread of life. Would you stand with me? We're going to do this differently this morning. We're going to end a little bit differently. We're going to pray the closing prayer together, and the closing prayer that will lead us into a quick song. We're going to pray the way Jesus taught us to pray. In Matthew, we're going to teach the Lord's Prayer, or say the Lord's Prayer together. And I want you to, as we say this audibly together, I want you to feel the words as they correlate with what we've just learned out of Exodus 15 through 17. See what Jesus is saying about what happened back then and how he is the fulfillment of this now. So would you pray this prayer out loud with me, and then we will sing a song. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Let's sing.